Welcome to Small Talk with Raincraft. I'm Subha, a leadership and executive coach.
And I'm Hasita. I'm a marketing strategist.
We're just two people who love to talk
and love to learn.
And this is us being curious about the world around us.
Join us. You know, Subha, there seems to be a new F word in town, yeah, and it's really getting to me. Well, just the other day, we have this new client to whom we sent a social media calendar, what seems like ages ago, honestly. They, of course, never saw it, and then they woke up with feedback just after we went live. And it was just not a comfortable experience because it very quickly went from, hey, we don't like this, to, hey, we should probably reconsider this engagement in like 5 minutes flat. And it shocked me and it upset me, honestly, because I think of myself as a very diligent person. And what I honestly heard from this whole fiasco was that I wasn't diligent. And to be honest, maybe there was some sliver of good feedback in there, something that I could potentially take and implement. But it was just lost in the fact that it happened the way it did. It just makes me wonder, why is it so difficult to give and receive feedback in a graceful manner?
Welcome, small talkers. Clearly, Hasita today is talking about the F word of feedback, the bane for so many of us in almost every day-to-day interaction, isn't it? Whether it's at home or with colleagues or with friends, we just sometimes really struggle to say what we want to say in a constructive way. And more often, we really struggle to receive what the other person is saying without taking it personally, because it just feels so personal and straight to the heart. So tell me more.
Personally, I feel like it's a huge affront and it really triggers the very primal fight or flight response in me. Usually flight less often, but somewhere I keep oscillating between the two, particularly when it's escalating too quickly, because I want to have a conversation. I want to understand sometimes what's happening. But the moment I hear things like, oh, this is too much, or oh, this is not working, oh, why are we going in this direction? Please question your entire existence as an expert in this domain because something is not working for me. I'm just wondering, was this the same when you were in a corporate environment, or was it hopefully slightly better in any way?
No, I think in the corporate environment, the word feedback is thrown around so much more often as a very formal mechanism to basically tell people they're not doing their job well, and not often enough to tell people that they are doing a great job. But feedback is something that is just such a part of our lives, but I think most of us don't understand it well enough, in the sense that we don't really think about the fact that, hey, what are we trying to achieve here? What's the goal, right? It's typically to get something done better or differently, right? It's towards something, and it's hardly ever about that individual, because we're all focused on tasks, we're focused on projects, objectives, meeting deadlines, and it's always towards that end. And how can we as a group, we as a team achieve that better? And very rarely is it that, hey, I just don't like working with you and I'm going to use this project and this opportunity to tell you that.
Yeah. It just feels like such a love-hate relationship when it gets into that phase. And also individual in the sense that what I'm hearing most of the time when I receive feedback is that you are not doing what you were supposed to do, or you are not delivering. So the you is very strong, full of hate.
Something we've talked about earlier also is that feedback, like you asked me, is it something, how does it happen in the corporate world? I think the distinction that we really might want to make is not so much between corporate and professionals outside a very formal corporate structure, but really the nature of work. For example, Pixar, which is such a creative corporate, right? You have so many people inside who are just creative folks churning out amazing stuff. They have a very simple way of looking at feedback. They said, okay, these are our rules. Be straightforward, be direct. Like, don't kind of beat around the bush and give examples of neighbors and cousins. Try and somehow let the other person know that you didn't like what they churned out. Be very direct, but identify the particular behavior that worked or did not work, and hence what was the impact of that. So when you focus on behaviors, very naturally the individual and their personality and all of that goes out the window. It's not about you, but it's about how you're doing something or what you're doing. And I'm trying to be as specific about it as possible, right? I think this is a bigger challenge today when we are now kind of doing a transition back to different forms of working together. So we had all kind of gotten into this habit of saying it's perfectly fine if each of you all are in your homes, and we've now even accepted network issues, disturbances, distractions, all of that, and it's perfectly fine. And now we're transitioning to a phase where companies, clients, people you work with are saying, hey, let's meet. Hey, land up here every day. Let's do it this way. And so you're having varied reaction.
To readjust in a way. Yeah.
So many people are saying just no can do. I have set up a routine in my life which involves or requires me to stay at home. I'm not budging because I have seen the advantages of this, and no way I'm spending time on the roads getting to some place to do the same thing. And hence, even the employers are taking different routes. Come when you can, come if you want. No, you have to come, all sorts of stuff. And I think this is only going to create more friction and more need to give each other constructive feedback. Hey, this behavior of yours is working for me. This is not. So not to say, I don't like that you're working from home, but to say that, hey, the fact that you're not accessible before 1 p.m., this is the impact that it's having. So that's so less personal.
And also, I like the focus on the impact of that action versus the trigger in a way. Because the moment we talk about the event or the trigger, we are still talking about the person. But the moment we start talking about impact, there's something very clear over there for the other person to act on in a way.
And also to remind them that it's towards a larger goal, towards a certain outcome, and it's not about me. So you are not finger pointing, or you are not making me the victim, or making me the villain rather, because I've chosen to work from home, right? I have not garnered some advantage by not commuting for an hour, which you have chosen to do, right? That's when it becomes personal. So I think that's one kind of feedback which is going to be regularly happening between colleagues, team members, work partners, etc., where you're trying to remind people that it's this certain behavior that I'd like to talk about and see what can be done differently so that it works better for everyone. But coming back to what really got your goat.
In fact, I feel like creative professionals also get a bad rap as folks who tend to blow the fuse every time they're offered feedback. Oh, please tread carefully around this person when you have feedback involved. Now, obviously, you've been on both sides of that table and you continue to in a way. Say, for example, someone came back and said, hey, something about small talk, it's just not working. It hurts, no? So how, or rather, where is the problem, right? Because feedback is feedback. I mean, if you can take it and if you can spin it positively, and we see so many LinkedIn posts and motivational quotes about just taking feedback and rolling with the punches. But at some point, if I'm punched 200 times a day, I don't want to be doing it. So where is the issue really, right?
I think it comes back to what you said, that when you pointed out creative folks, because that's the kind of work that we do and the kind of folks we interact with. I think it's a larger set of who is really the expert in the task that's being discussed or in the work that you're giving feedback on, right? So even in a corporate, let's say where everybody is under the same umbrella, when one salesperson gives another salesperson feedback, it's okay to tell them what's not working and also maybe solution a bit. Hey, this proposal that you gave to the client, I don't think it was the right fit for them. Maybe you could try this. Why? Because you're both experts in sales. So you have some authority, and the other person also hopefully is open-minded to see that, hey, you know what you're talking about and I recognize that, and then it's up to me whether I take your input or not. But if the salesperson is telling a finance guy that, hey, the budget proposal that you asked me to share is not working, why don't you do this? That's when the friction starts, because the finance guy is thinking, hey, I'm the expert on the budget. So you don't get to tell me how to do my job, which is the same when you take it to the creative world. If you tell a designer getting my home renovated and I'm dealing with folks and architects, And it took me a few meetings to realize that they don't want me to tell them, this is what I want them to use, or this is what it should look like. They don't want the solution. That's their job. That's what they're hired to do. So they don't want me to say why don't we use dark wood here? That's the suggestion for them to come up with. But me, what I need to say is, hey, I need this room to look brighter. I need it to reflect a bit of light. I need it to not look smaller because of dark spaces. And then leave it to the expert to do their job.
I think that's a bit of a gold sort of insight right there, because it distinguishes between the problem statement and the solution in a way. And you don't hire people and then also tell them how to do their jobs. And that's also an interesting insight for me, because how many times probably consciously have I asked, hey, what do you want? And sometimes it feels like the obvious answer to that question is a solution, but rather asking behind it is to say, hey, what's the problem statement? What's the brief here really, right? So if we can just ask that question, what's your end goal? And that's true of everything from, I think, a piece of writing to redoing your house, of course, which is a much larger project. So now with this baseline understanding of experts versus team members, right? In a way, there's that difference between having a conversation versus delegating something and hoping that job will be done the way you expect it to. That also brings me to a question on tonality. So if I am talking to a client or a client is talking to me, in a way, we are sharing an equal partnership in seeing something done. So what are maybe certain questions that anyone who's stepping into a room with the intent of giving feedback of any kind, how do we get started, and what are maybe 2-3 things that we can really ask ourselves before we go shooting our mouths off, for lack of a better word?
Before doors are slamming or tears are flowing, So I think fundamentally, remind yourself of your motives, right? Before giving feedback, why am I doing this? What's that end game? What's that goal that I want to achieve at the end of this conversation with the other person? And also, what is important is that it is timely. A lot of times, why do we take it so personally? Because you feel like the person giving you this input kind of waited for it all to pile up and then just dumped it on you. So, hey, I've been writing for you for like 6 months now. And if you didn't like the style of the 5-6 articles that I've done, it would have really helped if you had told me after Article 1. But when they come to you after Article 6 and say that, we've been kind of tolerating it, but just doesn't work, then it feels personal. So the timeliness is important, right? When you sense that the other person needs to know that particular behavior is not suiting the goal, net. How quickly can you get that information across? So going back to that kind of simple Pixar framework, be direct, be about the behavior and its impact. Because the minute you let it pile up, you kind of waited for this to become bigger than it is. And now I have messed it up and you're trying to point it out and all that.
Yeah, so essentially take the emotional charge out, and a good way to do that is to get to it sooner rather than wait and let it boil over.
And I think between folks who are regularly working with each other, professionals, colleagues, etc., I think it's important to make this a regular give and take. So when you do have meetings, when you do have client check-ins, it's a good idea to, even in the agenda, say, hey, we're setting aside 5 to 10 minutes for both sides to share feedback on what's working, what's not. So in a way, that 10 minutes also, you have depersonalized it. This 10 minutes is for feedback. So you're not being surprised. You're not feeling like, hey, I came in to talk about something and suddenly she's telling me this doesn't work. I don't like this. I don't like that, right? Because those 10 minutes are meant for that feedback, obviously said in a more constructive way. So when you plan for it, when it's not so much of a surprise, that itself takes a lot of sting out of it.
No, that's actually been very helpful. And I think every behavior has to start with the individual somewhere. And probably what I'm also taking away from today is that it's okay to offer feedback to a client or to a consumer as well, in the sense that where are they coming from and are we aligned really even before we began? So probably just going back to the earlier example, maybe spending some time on just walking them through the nuance, doing a review, which probably they were not aware of, might actually be very, very helpful going forward. And also to remember, particularly because the folks that work with us are also creative people, to remember that the reason they've been hired is not just to pass on a task, but for them to bring their own unique perspective and nuance to whatever it is that they're doing, and make that a core strength rather than something that needs to be vetted and cut out of the system in a way. So yeah, makes sense. Thank you so much.
And an interesting thing you said, that it's okay to give feedback to a client. One thing that is really important to remember about feedback, that actually there's no hierarchy here. There's no that only X can give to Y and X has to be senior to Y, etc. We do it every day. We give feedback to our parents, don't we? And our kids definitely give us feedback. They don't hesitate, right? We don't kind of call it feedback and we don't think of it as such. And we also, especially with folks near and dear to us and whom we spend a lot of time with, we quickly learn how to calibrate and how to figure out what style, tone, content works for that person. Because you can't have this friction constantly in every little thing that you're doing at home, right? So typically we figure out that, hey, for my mom, I just need to tell her why something is not working and she'll figure out another solution. Maybe for my dad, I need to work with him on that solution. So the way I give that input also has to be different. Kids are a whole other story. I think it's important to also remember feedback is definitely not hierarchical. If you can focus on your motives and the goal, what are we trying to achieve here as a unit, as a team, as a working partnership, etc. Keep it timely, keep it crisp, keep it about the behavior, actions, remind people of the impact it's having, and overall be kind when giving and be kind to yourself in receiving. Keep reminding yourself it's about the work and it's not about you. And maybe there is truth in what they're saying. That's the tough part.
Yeah, just that grain of truth hidden behind so much, but hopefully the hiding will stop after this episode.
Great. As always, so much fun chatting with you.
Likewise, Subha. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys. See you next time. Thank you for listening till the very end. We hope you enjoyed the conversation. If you'd like to leave us a note about the episode, please do write in at connect@raincraft.in or drop us a voice message at speakpipe.com/raincraft. All the details about our guest today and how you can find us on social media are available in the show notes. So please do have a read and catch you next time.